Parent of 2 children he adopted when his sister and her husband tragically died within 2 months of one another. He was also a Boston police officer. John was dating Karen Reed for a couple of years when tragedy struck. After a night of bar hopping in downtown Canton, Massachusetts, John was found dead on the front lawn of another officer's home who was hosting an after-hours party. Prosecutors say Karen ran him over after a heated argument fueled by jealousy, but the defense says he was killed inside the home, and the homeowners, along with local and state police, conspired to frame Karen Reed. Tonight, we return to the scene of Officer O'Keefe's death. What does it tell us? We'll take a look at Karen Reed's demeanor and reaction and examine the prosecution's alleged motive for murder as we continue our investigation of the tragic death of Officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us tonight. We are live at Blue Ribbon Barbecue, downtown Dedham, Massachusetts. Another day for the trial of Karen Reed, accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend. Tonight, we have a lot to get to because not only did a lot happen inside the courtroom, I took care of some things outside of the courtroom. And I want to begin here. This is a murder case. Prosecutors have charged Karen Reed with the murder of Officer John O'Keefe. It's not an accident. It's not a vehicular homicide. Their theory of the case is that Karen Reed was angry with John O'Keefe. Karen Reed, the relationship had soured. Karen Reed purposely threw her car in reverse and ran him over and then left him in the cold to die. And everything she did after that was sort of play acting like she didn't do it. That's their case. So prosecutors say this is a murder case. At the same time, the defense is saying this is a conspiracy. This is a police conspiracy case where the local police from Canton, Massachusetts, with the Massachusetts State Police and the people who were inside the home all conspired together and framed Karen Reed for this murder. That's what's going on in this case. That's what makes it different. That's what makes it much more complicated than whether or not a woman was drinking and driving and struck her boyfriend. It's way different than that. Accusations going both ways, and guess what, folks? Someone is wrong. Someone's wrong here. Prosecutors could be completely off base here in going after Karen Reed and not going after the people in the home. But by the same token, Karen Reed's defense attorneys could be completely wrong. That there was actual animosity. Something happened in that car. Karen was outraged and ran him over. Or they both could be wrong. They both could be wrong. It could be something in the middle. Like someone who was drinking and driving and turning her car around, accidentally struck her boyfriend. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't realize it, and she left the scene. But no one is saying that. No one is saying that. One side's saying murder, the other side is saying, no, the police did it. And then they framed her to make it look like she did it. So, what did I do today? Today, I returned to the scene. I hadn't been there yet. The place where John O'Keefe died. And I wanted to give you my first impressions of the scene of John O'Keefe's death. This is the home where the after party was, and the big question is, did John O'Keefe ever go inside that house that night? Obviously, prosecutors say no, the defense says yes. But what we do know is where John O'Keefe was found the next morning, and that's right in the area where I am right here. This part of the yard. And if you look at where it is in relation to the house, as they've described inside the courtroom, if you're looking at the house, it's to the left. And there are some landmarks I want to point out to you. Number one, the flagpole. Here's the flagpole. Now behind me is where I believe the bush would have been, because the new owners have done something a little different. There's a bush set back, but this area is clear right here. Now, one other landmark on this yard is the fire hydrant. So there you have the fire hydrant, the flagpole, and the bush area, and that is where John O'Keefe was found, right here on the ground that morning beneath 6 inches of snow. And the question is, how did he get here? Well, prosecutors say he was struck by Karen Reed. We've also heard inside the courtroom an argument about some evidence the prosecution has that Karen Reed's car was going in reverse 24 miles an hour for 62 feet. Now, if that's the evidence they're going to use to try to prove that she backed into John O'Keefe, how does she travel 62 feet? Well, it's not this way across the road because the road's not that wide. It would have to be from this direction. And if you go down this direction, I paced it off. 62 feet takes you to about where that tree is on the neighbor's yard. So she would have had to have pulled away a certain amount, then stop the car, put it in reverse, and then come back this way for his body to end up here. So is that plausible? Was she driving away and then decided, I'm going to kill him, puts the car in reverse, 24 miles an hour this direction, strikes him, and he ends up on this part of the yard? I think that's where prosecutors are going with their case. Does the evidence, or is the evidence consistent with that? We'll see during the course of this trial what the experts have to say. Now, the taillights, they say they found here at different parts of the investigation in this area on the yard. But let's look at the other side of all of this. The defense case, where they say John O'Keefe was killed inside that home. So if he's killed inside that home, people there would have carried his body or dragged his body and placed it in this area. Why would they place it in this area, not somewhere else? Well, maybe at that point, they saw or they knew where Karen Reed had been driving the car, where she had dropped him off. And maybe it was at that moment they said, okay, we place his body here and we'll blame Karen Reed for the murder? Or did they place his body here to say, hey, maybe he got hit by a snowplow? We're not sure exactly what their theory is, but they are saying that he went inside, was killed there, and then his body was placed here, and now they're saying Karen Reed has been framed for his murder. The bottom line, whether you believe the defense version or the prosecution version or something else, that morning, this is the spot where Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found dead. All right. We've got some great guests joining us, and of course, with me, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, and also joining me tonight here is Kevin Lanahan, Yellow Cottage Tales YouTube creator, has been covering this story in depth. So great to have you both here.
Thank you. Of course.
Matt, you've both have been to the scene, obviously,
Yep.
but Matt, your thoughts about the scene in general?
Well, it's being talked about so much today, and it was so critical in the first 2 days of the testimony. You know, you see the scene in photographs, but being there, and remember, this jury is going to do a jury view. And they
need to do that jury view.
They're going to see that there is no curb there. They're going to see that distance that you were pointing out. And they've already seen the video that was really played over and over again today. And when they were talking about Jennifer McCabe there, along with Carrie Roberts, and their demeanor there at the scene, and what was used, there was a snowblower used, and then they played the video over and over again, trying to, in cross, Alan Jackson was trying to bring out what he believes Karen Reed said through the witness, the first responder. Let's take a listen.
Officer Sheriff, I want to focus your attention, if you wouldn't mind, on 9 seconds after you say what happened. Just count in your head and listen very, very carefully to the woman's voice that responds and what she says. Go ahead. Pause it. Very, very hard to hear. Have you listened to that before?
No.
Does it appear to you that she said, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home?
I couldn't understand anything.
Please listen to, there's a din of noise, obviously, road noise, wind noise, etc. It's your dash cam, the audio from your dash cam. Once you close the door, listen very carefully, about 9 seconds after you say what happened, for a woman's voice, and see if you can make out what that voice says.
Sure.
Stop. Did you hear? I left him and he never came home.
I couldn't understand what they were saying.
You couldn't understand that?
No.
And Vinnie, Judge Cannoni, she cut him off when Alan Jackson asked for the jury to hear it a third time. Court TV has a crew in that room, and we were hearing that, you know, some of the jurors were leaning in, trying to get a better listen. I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't become like another argument in a trial that we covered, the Murdoch situation. I did them so wrong.
Right.
They did them so wrong.
Right. Kevin, your thoughts about that? Does this sound? I mean, I was listening and listening again today, putting headphones on, trying to figure it out. I couldn't make it out.
I couldn't make it out either. And just, if I don't know if you want to rewind that a little bit. For the other thing I noticed from yesterday, from Officer Sharaf's dash cam video, and one of the things the state made a big deal about in the charging document is that Kerry and Jen could not understand how Karen could see John lying there in the snow. And I wasn't really sure about how that would be, but then seeing the dash cam video, it's really dark there. And that's even with Sharaf putting on his spotlight a couple of blocks before.
Which they wouldn't have.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have when they're pulling up. And that was one of the reasons they charged her with murder, because they don't believe that she just saw him. They believe she knew that she was there. Okay, another big part, Matt, is Karen Reed's demeanor.
That's really being debated with all of the first responders on the scene. I mean, you have police officers saying one thing, you have fire medics saying another thing, and was she perhaps suicidal? You know, there was allegations of that. We have some clips that I wanted you to hear, and we can talk about it.
She was screaming, is that my boyfriend? Is he dead?
When you say screaming in a fairly loud voice, correct?
Very, very loud, yes.
And as far as that sort of phraseology, as far as is he dead, how many times was that something she said? Once, more than once, or something?
Repeated many times.
Now, as far as Ms. Reed, the defendant, is concerned, what, if anything else, did you observe as far as her saying or her demeanor or anything like that?
Just the screams and she was very distraught.
All right, so I'm listening to those screams. I mean, to me, what does that tell us? What does it tell you, Kevin? Anything?
I don't think it really tells us anything, although I think it's going to have a powerful impact in the jury, though, because we're going to hear 5 firefighters and at least 1 officer say she was repeating, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. So I don't know exactly what that means. Was she just distraught or confused? And what we're seeing now is this really strange thing where the defense is hammering Jen McCabe. They're really
they're going after Jen
They're
McCabe.
turning this to Jen versus Karen, right? And if the jury is not going to believe that Jen McCabe is some kind of arch villain, Lex Luthor combined with Hannibal Lecter, I don't know how they're going to sell this to a jury. And so I don't, you know, what that screaming was at the scene, I think it's hard to read into it.
And there was testimony about that today.
You know, I think it actually helps the defense when you have a hysterical loved one at the scene.
That's how you expect them to
That's how
act.
you can interpret it, you know, and then maybe, you know, those suicidal, what was she saying that was suicidal? We didn't get an explanation in that either. You know, I think that this left more questions, possibly, than answers.
And Kevin was mentioning that contrast between Jennifer McCabe and Karen Reed. Let's take a listen to some testimony regarding that.
You did notice that she was absolutely hysterical.
Yes.
She was completely distraught.
Yes.
She appeared to be in shock.
Yes.
And there was a contrast between that demeanor that you observed with regard to Karen Reed and the demeanor of one of the other women on scene, Jennifer McCabe, was there not?
Can you kind of explain further?
Sure. Karen Reed was screaming, correct?
Yes.
She was yelling, correct?
Yes.
She was hysterical and distraught, correct?
Yes.
Jennifer McCabe was not.
Correct.
And that's the contrast, Matt, right? You're talking about Jennifer McCabe, seemingly cool as a cucumber.
Who is Jennifer McCabe? Well, it was pointed out today to the jury that she's the sister of the woman that owns the house.
So that's, I think you're right on here with what her role will be, how the jury perceives this woman, Jennifer McCabe, because I've heard it many times on many podcasts and other places, she's in the middle of all of this, right? And the folks who are supporting Karen Reed believe she's the villain.
I'm actually stunned to see the defense going this far down this road to where they're calling her a liar already, and they're trying to question her actions at the scene, and they're going as far to make her this kind of sociopathic villain that it's really hard to believe that she could be that way. So if she goes on the stand and doesn't come across as that kind of an arch villain, it blows the whole defense strategy and risks turning off the jury.
But that cross-examination, you know, that's probably one of the big moments in this case for the defense will be Jennifer McCabe on the stand and either Alan Jackson or David Yannetti trying to bring that out. Because we know the direct will be soft. It will be, you know, just tell us what you saw, what you heard, and it'll be predictable, but that won't be.
And she was brought up in a different way today.
How?
You know, through the video.
Oh, through the video, absolutely, absolutely.
And that was also, I just wanted to fill a little bit on that. So in that video there, what they don't tell you is the time. So it's 6:34. At that time, you guys may not know this, but John is long gone. He's already in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, possibly even at the hospital, okay? It's 6:34, and they stop it right before she goes in the house. But she goes into the house and up to the second floor and wakes up her sister and Brian Albert. And so
they're asleep.
They're asleep, and that's why she went into the house at that time. But they give you the impression, during the defense does, that they're going in that she's sneaking away to go in there while everybody's trying to save John at the scene, and that's not the case. John is gone.
He's gone already, taken by the EMTs. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the cover-up.
Yeah.
The allegations today, what did we hear?
Well, I mean, that is the juxt of all of that, you know, what you were just describing and what the defense was pointing out. It was almost a mic drop, jaw drop moment, I think, if people weren't familiar with that part of the case. Because the way that the defense pointed it out was, take a look at this video here, and then the dueling dash cam, take a look at the video here, and you see this person dressed like Jen McCabe walk up to the house, and they didn't explain it the way that you did. Right. The state didn't, the Commonwealth.
That's a good point.
But they said this.
Let's take a listen.
And now I'm going to ask to draw your attention to that car with snow on it. Pay special attention to that car as the film continues to run. Go ahead. Pause. Do you see a person standing in front of the car?
It appears to be a person, yes.
Walking from right to left?
Yes.
Would that be toward the house?
Yes, it would be.
Okay. And also, if you wouldn't mind switching your perspective, now you're looking more at the front of the house. Continue watching the film and see if you see that same person walking toward the house. Okay, stop. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see. Oh, yes. I saw the shadow, yes.
Right. Shadow of a person
Yes.
walking toward the front of the house.
Yes.
That was Jennifer McCabe going into the house, wasn't it?
I have no idea.
Would you think that a witness at a homicide scene being allowed to go into a house to make contact with other witnesses?
I didn't know it was a homicide scene, sir.
If I could finish my question. Do you think it's appropriate for a witness at a potential homicide scene, an unconscious person scene, whatever, crime scene,
Yes.
to make contact with other witnesses and begin discussing the situation unsupervised?
Can you rephrase that question, sir?
Do you think that's an appropriate thing to have happen?
I have no answer for that, sir. I don't know what you're asking.
Officer Seraph, when you go to a crime scene,
Yes, sir.
one of the first things that you'd want to do is secure the scene and separate witnesses so that interviews could be conducted, correct?
Sure.
You wouldn't want witnesses just cavorting together and getting their story straight, right?
Correct.
You'd want to avoid that at all costs,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And why is that?
So they can't collaborate their story.
And what's interesting is, what is the scene? Is the scene the front yard? Is it the front yard and the house? I guess that's the big question. We're out of time for tonight, but Kevin Lanahan, great to have you here. We'll speak to you again. Matt Johnson, working hard every day.
Trying.
Get some brisket over here, Blue Ribbon
good.
Barbecue.
Good.
That's where we are, downtown Dedham. Thanks so much. When we come back, we're going to focus in on the alleged motive for murder in this case, plus coming up next hour. In Boise, Idaho, the doomsday prophet Chad Daybell on trial and facing the death penalty. Is the prosecution winning this case?
This defendant is photographed laughing and dancing on a beach in Hawaii at his wedding. It's Lori Vallow, a woman who was his mistress and the mother of the children, buried in the graves on his property.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
What exactly was the relationship between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe? Where were they? Were they on the fritz? Was the relationship soured? Was there a reason for Karen Reed to murder John O'Keefe? Welcome back, folks. We are live at the Blue Ribbon Barbecue, downtown Dedham, covering day 2 of the Karen Reed trial. Another big day inside the courtroom, but right now I want to take time to focus on that motive and the history of this couple. Was there something there? Because remember what I said off the top, this is a murder case. When you have a murder case, you don't have to prove motive, but a jury wants to know why one person would want the other one dead. So let's take a look at some of what we've heard about the relationship between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe.
In the month or so leading up to Mr. O'Keefe's death, the relationship soured. You will see text messages between Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed to that effect. You will hear testimony from the children, from John's niece and nephew in regard to things they observed within that relationship. And you'll hear testimony from other individuals as far as their observations or things that they heard. Mr. O'Keefe, the defendant, and the children have been invited with a much larger group, approximately 70 people or so, to spend New Year's in Aruba. Runs into him in the lobby, gives him a hug, and is sort of pointing him in the direction of where she believes he's going into his room. The defendant is in the area. The defendant starts yelling and screaming and swearing at Ms. Sullivan. Ms. Sullivan responds in kind. And essentially, for the most part, the Sullivan sisters see very little of Mr. O'Keefe throughout the remainder of their trip to Aruba. We also hear testimony from the children that shortly after this, or immediately after this, there is a approximately 20-minute screaming match going on between Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant within their hotel room. What, if any, conversations did you have with your brother in regard to status of their relationship or any issues?
He didn't say too much. If they were arguing, he might, give reference that they were arguing. Didn't really tell me what they were arguing about, but mostly kept that stuff to himself.
What, if anything, did he mention to you as far as reasons for an argument or sort of points of contention?
He didn't like, if she would spend a lot of money on the kids for gifts, or, I know there was some arguments over, what she fed them, whether it's, Dunkin' Donuts or whatnot, but it was things along those lines.
With respect to their relationship, what, if anything, were you aware of as far as fights, arguments, issues, anything like that?
I think normal relationship. You know, the stuff everyone goes through.
If I could ask you just if you could expound upon that a little as far as when you say normal relationship stuff, what exactly do you mean?
I know that, you know, my in-laws being there often could be stressful. And, you know, two people with kids in life, normal everyday relationship. I asked her if everything was okay, if something was up. And she responded and said, just another day, I wish I didn't talk to an O'Keefe after 2004.
And how did you respond to that?
I said, what happened? What's going on? And they had bickered, I guess, about her taking Kaylee to Dunkin' Donuts in the morning before school.
And just to be clear, when you say they, you mean Johnny O'Keefe and Karen Reed?
Correct.
Do you recall sort of how that conversation evolved or what, if anything, else was said during that time?
I just knew that they had gotten into some type, I don't know if it was an argument or there was something. They bickered about her taking them, and he said that she spoiled them.
Okay. We have covered a lot of cases at Court TV through the years involving allegations of spousal murder. Now, they're not married, but they're a couple, and they're sort of living as a family. And in those cases, what I generally see and have seen through the years, insurance money, a divorce is going to be too expensive. They don't have to get divorced here. They're not married. Custody of the children, if they got divorced as a motive. We've seen that a lot recently. That's not the case here. Money, jealousy, right? Someone finds someone else and has to get the other one out of the way. But again, that's for a married couple. Here you can break up. You don't even have to go to court to do it. So what does this motive evidence really mean? Let me bring in a couple more guests joining me tonight. They both are part of the Ivy League Murders podcast. They're co-hosts together, Sarah Alcorn, who's to my left, and at the end, Laura Rodriguez McDonald. Great to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, I would say ladies first, but you're both ladies. So, Laura, she's a first-timer. You're an old-timer here already. Do you see a motive here?
I do.
What's the motive?
I think rage fueled by alcohol is quite a motive.
Okay, so rage about what? Is it actually about the Dunkin' Donuts argument?
No, I don't think so. I think what we see is somewhat of a toxic relationship. I'm not sure Karen Reed was that emotionally stable. And I think what we see is him maybe trying to get out of the relationship. And we see some fights along the way that shows it's a little bit of a toxic relationship. And I think what might have happened that night is there might have been a big fight. And in a moment of rage...
When was the fight, though, right? Because they're at the waterfall. Is there evidence of a fight at the waterfall, Sarah? I'm not sure if we're going to see that or not.
I think what we see are there is evidence of a number of different, like, pretty inflammatory texts that she
text messages,
yeah,
right?
text and a voicemail from that night. And so yes, we see a lot of cases. I see a lot of cases too where jealousy is a big motivation. Jealousy, and let's not forget that they had gone to Aruba over New Year's Eve, right? She had, and according to the testimony that we've heard, that John O'Keefe, that Karen had caught John O'Keefe kissing somebody.
One of the Sullivan sisters.
One of the Sullivan sisters.
One of the Sully sisters.
Laura Sullivan's sister, essentially. And so Karen was really angry about this.
Right. It doesn't seem like a very stable relationship. There seems like a lot of bickering, a lot of accusations.
It started in COVID, which is a particularly, they had a previous relationship.
Okay, but why in that moment? Why in that moment does it become a motive for murder?
There was
murder. Like, I am going to hit my foot on the pedal of this car, and I am going to kill him.
Well, let's not forget, too, that Karen and Higgins, who is another person who is present that night, who is an ATF agent, where she kissed him 2 weeks prior to this.
2 weeks, that's right. Again,
Right.
2 weeks prior, down in Aruba. Now they're back, they're in Canton, they're at the waterfall, they're together with friends, then they get in the car together. And at what point does she form the intent necessary for murder?
We don't know. He might have said to her in that car, you know, I'm getting out. I don't ever want to see you again. That's it. Go, you know, be with Higgins. Or you know, we don't know, and we may never know what pushed her to that point. And I personally think the case was a little overcharged. I think she was very drunk, and she may not have intended to kill him.
Well, now it's not a murder case.
Yes.
Now it's not a murder case.
But that doesn't.
No.
You're still She may. I think that she meant to hit him, but in a drunken rage, you're still. It's still a murder.
I don't agree. I don't agree at all. The reason being is Karen Reed is not a stupid woman. She's quite an intelligent woman. She is a professor. So what is she going to do? This is my whole problem with this case. She's going to drive the murder weapon to the scene. Arguably, that's arguable. To the scene.
I don't think it's arguable. I don't think that's arguable.
And then point out the body of the person that she has hit intentionally. It doesn't make sense to me.
On the front lawn of a police officer.
Correct.
We're out of time for tonight. It's the Ivy League Murders podcast. Laura Rodriguez McDonald, Sarah Elkhorn, thank you both so much.
We'll continue this on the podcast. So tune in.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got a lot more to get to. When we come back, let's talk about, Jennifer McCabe, the house. We're going back to the house.
You will learn that there were 6 people at that after-hours party at Brian Albert's house, all of whom left by the front door and would have been confronted by John O'Keefe's lifeless body on that lawn if he was actually there at that time. Those 6 people walked out the front door to 34 Fairview, walked to their cars either in the driveway or parked in front of the house. Brian Albert's sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matthew McCabe, was there. ATF federal agent Brian Higgins was there, who was also Brian Albert's friend. Sarah Levinson, a friend of Brian Albert Jr., was there. Julie Nagel, another friend of Brian Albert Jr., was there. And Caitlin Albert, Brian Albert's daughter, was also there. All of them leaving the residence.
Now, there are a lot of names, right? There's an after-hours party. There's people at the bars. So there's one name, though, that I think you're going to hear a lot more than the rest, and that's Jennifer McCabe. We've already been talking about her tonight. Let me put up on the screen, give you an idea of some of the significance of Jennifer McCabe for this case. Who is she? Well, she was out drinking with O'Keefe and Reed the night of January 28, 2022. It's on her phone where the search, How Long to Die in the Cold, was done. The defense claims that Jennifer McCabe then tried to delete that search. John O'Keefe's body was found in front of Brian Albert's home, who is Jennifer McCabe's brother-in-law. So there's a connection. Brian Albert was a fellow Boston police officer with O'Keefe, and Jennifer McCabe has been named as a witness in this case. Now, let's get back to that search. David Yannetti, in his opening statement, talked about that search, which, trust me, is an absolutely crucial part of this case.
2:12 a.m., Jennifer McCabe arrives at her home. 2:22 a.m., Brian Albert calls Brian Higgins. 2:22 a.m., 17 seconds later, Higgins calls him back, and Brian Albert and Brian Higgins are on the phone together for 22 seconds. 2:23 a.m., Jennifer McCabe climbs the stairs to her bedroom. 2:27 a.m., Jennifer McCabe searches on Google, How long to die in the cold.
All right, let me bring in my guest joining me again tonight. But tonight we're indoors and we fed them, folks. Nick Rocco, Karen Reed's supporter and runs that Facebook page. And we've got Joseph Krowski Jr., incredible criminal defense attorney from our area. You've seen his work on Court TV, by the way.
Thank you. And I didn't eat, by the way.
Oh, you didn't?
I did not eat.
Oh.
Looking for that summer weight.
They told me they fed you.
Right.
Okay, we'll feed you afterwards. We'll see how it goes, though. Nick, why is Jennifer McCabe the villain, right? I mean, this is the way Karen Reed supporters see her, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, let's start when she left 34 Fairview Road that morning. She went home, Google searched at 2:27 a.m., house long to dying cold. 2 minutes after the butt dials happened between Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, when everybody was supposedly sleeping, she's been up all night long. Karen calls her, where's John? They go looking for her, okay? They end up back at 34 Fairview Road, where Jennifer McCabe calls 911. When you end up hearing this 911 call, she is very calm and collected. She does not state that a Boston police officer who was her friend was found on the lawn of her sister. She says a man is dead on the lawn when she calls 911. When she hangs up that phone, she calls her sister, who was inside that house at 34 Fairview Road. That call was answered for 9 seconds. It was not a voicemail. That was picked up. They were alerted inside that house that there was something going on in that lawn. And when the police officers arrived, you can see the demeanor of Karen Reed. She was frantic. She's screaming and crying. She found her boyfriend dead on the lawn. Jennifer McCabe, Kerry Roberts, very calm, talking to the police, giving them their story. Before, they're not concerned about John on the lawn. And then after that, Karen gets sectioned. What do? They go home. Jennifer McCabe deletes all of her phone calls from that morning. That's not a coincidence. You don't just delete. Why delete a 911 call out of your call log if you have nothing to hide? You deleted every phone call out of there because they didn't want it to be found.
Joseph, is she the villain in the case? Like, in cases that I've covered through the years, the defense always finds someone.
So let me get this straight. I'm in a barbecue restaurant talking about a Canton lacrosse mom in connection with a second-degree murder case.
Yeah, that's where you are.
Here we are.
That's where you are.
Right?
That's where you are.
So look,
it's too cold out there.
There's a chance. I think the defense is, and I'm not an advocate for Jennifer McCabe. I'm looking at this objectively as a trial attorney. There is the risk that they oversell that, because you can look back at cases where you have criminal enterprises that take weeks and months to plan and conspire, and ultimately, hardened criminals, someone always cracks. You would have to believe a housewife, a mother, well-respected in the community, on a moment's notice, was able to conspire with other civilians and put this thing together, and not a single person has cracked. So there is a risk that the defense oversells this. They have no burden of proof, but they don't want to put themselves in the position where they take too much ownership of this theory, and then they actually have to prove McCabe had something to do with this. What they're doing now is what a good defense attorney should do.
They're just tossing it out there, right?
Well, because
let the jury take the next step.
Can we talk about what's really going on here?
Please.
Do you think there's second guessing going on right now in the district attorney's office? Absolutely. This case is overcharged. Had they not overcharged this case, likelihood is they never get access to any of these cell phones. Had they not overcharged this case, motive is irrelevant. Had they not overcharged this case, the scope of investigation would more reflect the charge. So Yannetti and Jackson are going to poke all these holes in the investigation because you do expect a murder case has a robust investigation. A motor vehicular homicide case is much more narrow in scope. So this is a self-inflicted blow. Self-inflicted blow number 2. I don't know Trooper Proctor, but really, that is the height of state police arrogance. Don't you think he should have sat this one out? He now gave life and breathed oxygen into the conspiracy theory, and so it's putting the prosecution on the defense.
On the defensive.
They should have tried it cleanly the way it was charged in district court. I don't know what the compelling evidence was from district court to superior court that led to Karen Reed being charged with murder 2. And I'll tell you, it's way too early, but the murder 2 is slowly drifting out to sea.
Nick's shaking his head.
I don't know what.
It's people think it's more complex than it really is. They're family, friends. They all know each other. You have the lead detective on this case, okay, who Jennifer McCabe was at his house. They say conspiring about the intimidation that they've had. But it's a weekday, 6 o'clock, it's dinner time, and she's there. But yet they're telling the world that there's no connection there. But they can't come back on that now because Michael Proctor had finally admitted that he does have a family relationship with these people. So, you know, you may think, why is a soccer mom doing this, or why is a soccer dad doing that? People do things. You'd be surprised. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it as a criminal.
You've seen a lot. I got 25 years in this, Nick. I don't think you have any. And I've never seen anything like this.
And there's a first
I don't
for
think
everything.
Vinnie has either.
There's a first for everything, and I think we're seeing it here.
Is there any belief by any Karen Reed supporters that maybe she was drinking, maybe she doesn't remember, maybe she struck him but didn't do it on purpose?
I mean, she's got medical issues, and she did not drink 9 drinks within the hour. It didn't happen. And if that was the case, why did her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, let her get behind the wheel if she was that drunk? Why?
Well, it looks like both of them had a history of drinking. But even on the motive evidence, Dunkin' Donuts, I mean, anyone that lives in Massachusetts, it's one of the 5 basic food groups.
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts. So in that, none of that is in this case if murder isn't charged. But again, I still, look, Proctor's going to be fair game, and they don't necessarily, it's nuanced, right? It's not just necessarily third-party culprit. In Massachusetts, we have what's called the Bowden defense, where lapses in the investigation, and here, the lapse isn't because they're not asserting it's because of negligence or laziness. They're asserting it's because the trooper of CPAC was conflicted out, and the judge is going to instruct the jury that they can consider that in the context of whether or not the case has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So
that's
the
powerful.
defense has 2 bites at it. A, someone else did it, and the prosecution has to prove they didn't. Or B, someone else might have done it, and Proctor didn't investigate that possibility. Again, it's because of the murder charge.
We have 10 seconds left for Nick Rocco to tighten this up.
Listen, I truly believe that Karen is being framed. One thing that stuck out to me earlier was that Adam Lally stated that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe at 12:45. She was home by then. She was at John's house by then. And if you want to say they got into a fight, John said, I don't ever want to see you again. Why did she go back to his house where the niece was there? Why did she go back there? If he didn't want to see her again, he would have said, go back to your house in Mansfield, not my house.
We're out of time, but I know you want to say more.
Barbecue. Thank you.
All right, Nick Rocco, Joseph Crowley Jr. Thank you both so much.